Hey guys. This is part 4 of What If Naruto was assigned to Might Guy and Team 3. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. This part will cover chapters 9. Let's start. Chapter 9, Battle on the Bridge. I see that you've decided to do exactly as I said, Might Guy. I'm kind of surprised. Zabuza's voice resounded throughout the thick mist. Where are you? Where's Lee? Guy shouted as he looked around, unable to spot anyone. Guy-sensei. I'm right here. Lee's voice came from straight in front of him. Guy squinted hard and two figures slowly became visible. Lee! Guy shouted happily. He was all right. At the very least he was alive. What a touching reunion, Zabuza said mockingly. But let's not forget why we're all here. What's your angle here, Zabuza? I have two people you want, you only have one. Guy eyed the man carefully. How about we make this a little interesting? Zabuza drawled out slowly. I'll send Lee and you send Haku out halfway. They can fight each other for their freedom. I refuse. You're sick. Guy shot him down instantly. Zabuza roared with laughter at Guy's immediate refusal. You don't have a choice. Either take it or I'll cut his head off right here. Zabuza grabbed onto his sword as he spoke. TCH. Damn. Guy looked down to Haku and nodded him forward. I'm sorry. Haku whispered so Zabuza couldn't hear. As he stepped forward, he drew his saban needles. Go on, brat. Zabuza looked down at Lee as he spoke. It does not have to be this way. You can still take my offer. Come with us. Lee had yet to take a step forward. Get going. Zabuza turned his gaze away from him. Lee stared at him for another few seconds. Goodbye, Zabuza-san. Lee whipped out a kunai and also took a few steps forward. Tazuna watched in panic as Lee and Haku walked up to each other. The bridge was now completely silent except for the footsteps of the two shinobi, as they got closer and closer. The anxiety was almost too much for the older man's heart. Hey! Tazuna whispered to Guy, shouldn't you join him? This is much too risky. What if Zabuza attacks? Guy kept a grim expression as he stared forward. Zabuza won't move. He wants to test my nerves. He wants me to make a mistake. Tazuna looked back to Lee. He really hoped Guy was right. The two shinobi stopped 10 paces from one another. Please, make this a most youthful battle. Lee brought his kunai up in front of himself as he spoke. He smiled at his opponent, a very tight-lipped one. I would rather not fight you at all. If it can be helped, I would rather not kill you. Haku raised his saban to throwing position. That makes two of us. Lee's smile dropped, and his look became completely serious. Naruto-san and Hinata-san have been training hard since the incident. You'd be proud of them. Haku threw the saban and vanished a second later. Lee easily deflected all of them and then looked for his opponent. I would expect nothing less from my teammates. Lee looked down to see his shadow growing. Realizing that Haku was above, he jumped backwards just as Haku landed on the ground where he had been. His saban struck dangerously low into the bridge. Still in midair from his jump, Lee whipped his kunai at his foe. Haku easily ducked out of the way and charged at Lee again. The second Lee's feet touched the ground, he was off like a rocket. Haku hardly had time to block the fist aimed towards his face. Haku dropped low and performed a sweeping kick. Lee jumped over it and countered with a kick. Haku caught his leg. You are quite fast. Haku acknowledged. It is apparent it will take more than taijutsu to determine the outcome of this match. Haku began forming hand signs with his free hand. Damn, he's using his Kekkei Genkai. Guy took a step forward but stopped himself. Unfortunately, taijutsu is all I have. However, I will make it enough to beat you. Lee pulled his leg back and freed it from Haku's grasp. He landed in a crouching position. Just then, he noticed ice shards coming at him from every direction. What? Lee quickly launched himself into the air to avoid being skewered. Lee, I can't watch this battle. Not like this. Guy felt himself inclined to run to his student that he hadn't seen for 2 weeks. Wait right there, Mike Guy, I want to see this play out. Unless you want me to go for the bridge builder? Zabuza laughed again as Guy paused where he was. He grit his teeth. Zabuza was right and he knew it. He couldn't leave Tazuna's side just yet. Lee landed on the ground just as a spike of ice shot from it at him. Lee quickly moved to the side. 2 more shot at him from his left and right, and Lee was barely able to duck under these. He rolled sideways to avoid yet another spike that came from water that littered the bridge. Zabuza had prepared this beforehand. As Lee jumped up from his roll, the water beneath him turned into solid ice. Lee quickly lost his footing and slid painfully to the ground. He looked up to see Haku flying at him again, Saban ready. Now I got you. I'm sorry, Tazuna-san, Lee needs my help. Guy shot forward, but Zabuza immediately stood in his path. Out of my way! Guy shouted as he swung at the shirtless ninja. Zabuza used the broad side of his sword as a shield from Guy's punch. If that's how you want it, then you leave me no choice. Zabuza jumped back, slung his sword onto his back and put his hands together. The mist quickly intensified until Guy could barely see his own hand in front of him. This mist is too thick even for you, Zabuza. How do you expect to fight like this? Guy shouted into the white fog. He started looking around for any sign of his opponent. In response to his question, Guy heard a deep chuckle. You forget what I used to be, my Guy. I was a silent assassin of Kirigakure. Killing you when I can't even see you happens to be a specialty of mine. Lee rolled out of the way just as Haku hit the ground again. The frozen bridge now worked to Lee's advantage as he easily slid far enough away from Haku to get back into a ready stance. Impressive, you think fast on your feet. You are also able to dodge attacks coming from multiple directions at once, no doubt experience you have received from training with Naruto-san. As Haku spoke, the mist grew heavier. Soon Lee was unable to see his opponent. Unfortunately for you, I trained with Zabuza-san. Fighting in this mist is little of a disadvantage for me. It won't make a difference if we are far enough away from the source. Lee jumped backwards and began running away from where he assumed Zabuza was. As he ran, he heard just the barest sound of whizzing through the air. Lee ducked just as a set of saban flew over his head. He heard it again, and Lee turned his head to the side to avoid another set. The farther he went, the more the mist seemed to clear. His idea was working. Suddenly his progress was halted. Lee looked down to see his feet trapped in solid ice. He couldn't get out. No escape this time. Haku appeared in front of Lee, his saban poised to strike. Your assassination attempt won't work on me, Momochi Zabuza. I am a jonin of Konoha. If you get close enough to me, I'll sense you in an instant. Guy walked around aimlessly as he spoke, waiting for Zabuza to make his move. Guy would be ready. You may have a point there. Too bad there is another man here who doesn't have the same skills as you. Guy paled when he heard Zabuza's threat. Oh no! Guy began running for where he knew Tazuna was. He had to make it. There was no way he couldn't. Guy was just barely able to make out Tazuna's form now. Then he saw it. A giant blade cutting through the mist. He wasn't going to get there in time. Tazuna-san, move! Guy only hoped he would react in time. Kaiten! Kaige Bunshin no Jutsu. Zabuza's sword bounced harmlessly off of Hinata's spinning shield. Haku struck true, but he hit Naruto instead of Lee. Who's got who? Naruto laughed as blood fell from his mouth. He grabbed onto Haku's arm as a clone ran up from the right. Haku wasn't able to pull away and the new Naruto nailed him right in the face. Haku went rolling away. The Naruto with saban in him bent over, coughed up more blood and popped while the other Naruto disappeared into the mist after Haku. It's good to see you alive and well, bushy brow. Lee whirled around to see the real Naruto crouched at his feet, stabbing at the ice with the kunai. In just a couple seconds Lee was free and able to move again. Naruto, you saved me. I thought for a split second that the one that took the blow was you. Lee nodded gratefully to Naruto, who stood up, now that his task was complete. Yeah, that trick is pretty handy. Naruto laughed. We can catch up later, right? I got 2 clones left fighting that guy, we have to help them. Lee nodded happily. That won't be necessary. Haku's voice rang out from all around. Crap! Naruto and Lee quickly moved so they were back to back with each other. I can't believe he beat them so fast. 1 second they were there, and the next they just died. How did he do it? Simple, don't you see? You are already trapped inside my jutsu. The mist around them cleared enough that Naruto and Lee could see they were completely surrounded by mirrors. There was a Haku in each one. What the hell? Zabuza nearly lost his grip on his sword as it bounced backwards. The spinning shield that had deflected his blade disappeared to reveal Hinata slowly stopping her spin. You bitch! You think that pathetic jutsu will be enough to stop me? Zabuza brought his sword back up. Konoha Senpu! Guy landed a powerful kick into Zabuza's stomach. Zabuza was launched backwards into the mist, where he disappeared from sight. Guy landed in front of his student. Hinata, nice work. I trust there were no problems. Guy looked back at his student. Tazuna-san's house was attacked by a couple of samurai before we were able to leave. We think they were Gata's thugs, Hinata said, looking ready to spin if Zabuza showed himself. What? Is my family okay? Tazuna interrupted. Hinata nodded. They are fine. The samurai were trying to kidnap your daughter, but Inari stood up to them. He gave me and Naruto-kun the perfect distraction to sneak up on them and take them out. After we got them, we hurried here as fast as we could. Thank goodness it appears we weren't too late. Where is Naruto? I don't see him around. Guy glanced around briefly for his other student. He's here, but he's stopped to aid Lee-senpai. Hinata answered quickly. Excellent. Your fires are burning brightly. Guy gave Hinata the thumbs up before he turned serious again. Listen, Hinata. Don't leave Tazuna's side no matter what. I will fight Zabuza in the mist alone. Can I count on you to make sure Tazuna is safe? Yes, sensei, I won't fail you. Hinata stood firm. Good, be careful. With that, Guy charged into the mist. All right, Zabuza, it's time we settle this. Fine by me, I'm going to make you regret those words. Zabuza shouted from within the mist. What the hell is this? Naruto shouted. He and Lee were still back to back. You didn't mention that you were capable of making this many mirrors. Not to mention that you can make one of you in each mirror. Of course not. A true shinobi never reveals his secrets while not in a battle. The results could be fatal. All the reflections moved as one as they reached into his back pouch. Are they clones? Lee eyed each one extremely carefully in an attempt to decipher even a minor difference. No, they're not clones. Haku answered now. They are merely reflections. Now then, it's time I show you what real speed is. Each Haku lifted a single samban. In an instant, dozens of needles littered the floor. Naruto and Lee now had scratch marks everywhere. It happened so fast it took both of them an instant to realize what had happened. When they did, they both fell to the ground in agony. What the hell? Naruto gasped. That attack came from everywhere at once. Those must be clones. No, that was an extreme speed. I should have taken my leg weights off. Lee started to reach for them, but a senbon pierced his hand. Lee drew it back quickly. There will be no need for that, Haku said. I'd prefer you guys just lay quietly and give it up. Like hell. Kaige Bunshin no Jutsu. 3 more Narutos popped up. Okay, bushy brow, if we can't keep up in here, then we just gotta bust out. Let's make a run for it. Right. Let us go. Lee got up and started running. Naruto and his clones did the same, each of them went in a completely separate direction. It's pointless. Haku vanished from the mirrors for a second. In that second, Lee, Naruto and his clones were all thrown backwards. They had hardly gone more than a few feet. You have trained quite hard these past 2 weeks in order to make sure your clones wouldn't pop upon receiving damage. I'm sorry to tell you that all that training was completely pointless, Naruro-san. Go to hell, Haku. Naruto picked up a needle that was laying on the ground. For being so fast, your aim really sucks. Not a single one of these has nailed us directly. Is that so? Haku asked. In the next instant, Naruto had 3 senbon in himself, and each of his clones. Each one slowly fell over and popped. Damn it! Naruto slowly stood back up. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. 3 more clones popped up. Again, bushy brow. Naruto and his clones started running. Right. Lee also began running for an exit. You are trying my patience. Haku flew for Lee first. When he was knocked back, he went for the Narutos. He nailed the first one in the throat, forcing it to pop. Haku landed in a mirror and immediately jumped for the next one. He stabbed it, and it also popped. Haku turned to get the next one, but one of his own Saban flew right in front of his face. Haku backtracked quickly into a mirror before jumping back out and quickly knocking back the other 2 Narutos. Damn it, I almost had him. One Naruto groaned as he got up. Both of them picked up another Saban. Lee looked at him in surprise. You can see him move? Not exactly. I'll explain later. Can you keep going, bushy brow? Each Naruto appeared to make another clone. Of course. Lee pulled a couple Saban out of himself as well. He then stood up. All of them took off in a separate direction again. Haku decided to go for Naruto first this time. He took care of another clone. Suddenly, he felt a Saban pierce his shoulder. Haku was so surprised he stopped moving. Lee noticed right away and changed his direction. He jumped and spun in the air towards his opponent. Haku blocked his spinning kick, but Lee's follow-up punch nailed him square in the stomach. Haku flew into a mirror, but instead of smashing into it, he sunk inside. Heh, I got him that time. Naruto smiled proudly to himself. That shouldn't be possible. Haku muttered in disbelief. No one can see my movements. I have to end this fast. Haku launched himself at Naruto before he had a chance to replace his fallen clone. When he popped this one, another Saban flew at him. Haku barely ducked this time and then flew back into his mirror. Now I get it. You can't see me at all, can you? Figured it out already? Naruto chuckled. That's right. Learning to maintain my clones wasn't the only thing I learned while training. When you pop my clones, I know right where you are. I just have to throw one of the needles you leave me when their knowledge comes into my head. So far, I'd say it's working pretty good. Most impressive, Naruto. Lee pumped his fist into the air. With this strategy, escape probably wasn't even necessary. They just had to run around and force Haku to attack them. Taking off his weights wouldn't be needed either. Shadow clones take an incredible amount of chakra. How long can you keep this up? Haku's appeared in all of the mirrors again. Way longer than you'll be able to keep up this crappy jutsu of yours. Naruto bragged. I have the most chakra of any genin in the leaf. There's no way I'll run out against someone like you. This is most unfortunate. I had been avoiding your vital points. I had come to enjoy your company over these past couple weeks, but it would appear I no longer have any choice but to kill you. Haku launched himself at Naruto. He pierced him in the heart. He disappeared in a poof of smoke. Now just you left. Haku threw another set of Saban at Naruto and Lee. Naruto, having received information from his clone, was able to roll out of the way. Lee wasn't so lucky, but he did manage to avoid getting hit in his vitals. Damn it, I think he's serious. Naruto formed the ram seal once again. Bushy brow, you going to be able to go another time? Naruto looked with worry over at his teammate. Why yeah, no problem, Naruto. Lee staggered to his feet. He didn't even bother to pull any needles out. He didn't want to admit it, but he was still sore from being thrashed by Zabuza a week ago too. Now he was covered in needles. Anyone would be exhausted, yet he couldn't afford to let his teammate down. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Again, 3 more Narutos appeared. Why do you try so hard? Can't you see that it is impossible to win in here? My jutsu has never fallen before. Haku was frustrated now. Now Naruto was dodging his Senban. Proof that this was taking far too long. He was running out of chakra. Haku was going to have to get underhanded to end this. It's because we can't die yet. We're finally together again. There's no way I'd let something as stupid as dying split us back up. Naruto and his clones took a running stance. Lee smiled happily at his best friend. Let's take this guy out, Naruto. You got it, bushy brow. Let's go. The Narutos took off. Lee started to, but a Saban hit him in the calf, causing him to stumble and fall. Haku flew at Lee now. Naruto stopped and turned. Time seemed to slow down. Haku was flying at Lee, one Saban ready to strike him down. Naruto whipped a kunai out of his pouch and began to run towards Lee as well. Haku was too close. He was going to strike. Putting on a final burst of speed, Naruto got in front of him and swung his kunai. It impaled Haku in the stomach. Lee looked up to see Naruto standing in front of him, a Saban run through the side of his neck. Haku was bleeding hard from the stomach and he appeared to be coughing up blood. Naruto! Your clone got him. Lee rose slowly to his feet. Not yet! Naruto roared and pulled the kunai out. He went to strike again, but Haku pushed him back and jumped towards his mirrors, throwing more Saban as he did. They all connected with Naruto. As this happened, 3 Narutos disappeared. The one who had taken the hits remained. Guy ducked under another swing Zabuza made. He turned around to deliver a powerful kick, but as always, Zabuza was gone. They had been going back and forth like this for minutes now. Zabuza would appear swinging, Guy would block or dodge and return fire, only for Zabuza to have already vanished back into the mist. This kind of battle doesn't much suit my flames of youth. Why don't you say we make this a little more head-on? Guy jumped over a low swing from the sword. When he landed, Zabuza wasn't anywhere to be seen. Then he heard the whizzing of the blade from behind him. Guy realized with fear that he couldn't dodge all the way this time. So he jumped backwards. The back of the blade by the handle cut deep into his hip. Guy was able to deliver a powerful elbow into Zabuza's ribcage in exchange though. Zabuza disappeared back into the mist. That sounds fun, but no thanks. Any minute now and Haku will have your 2 students down, and he'll come to assist me. Not even you can take us both at once. Guy wasn't able to pinpoint Zabuza's voice. That is a most unyouthful strategy. I would have expected more pride out of you. Guy took 2 small steps backwards. His hands were ready for anything. Besides, how can you be so sure your pupil will win? He has outnumbered himself. Haku could never lose. He for sure has them trapped in his jutsu by now. Once that happens, it is only a matter of time. I guarantee it. Zabuza appeared right in front of Guy, thrusting his sword forward. Guy stepped to the side and punched Zabuza through the face. He turned into water. I got you, no! Zabuza was in the air above Guy. He swung his sword down. This time, instead of dodging, Guy spun around and slapped his hands on either side of the blade. He managed to halt its progress inches before it split his face. Zabuza's feet hit the ground. He tried to pull his sword back, but he couldn't move it. Guy smirked. Wrong, I've got you now. Lee couldn't move. He couldn't speak. This one was a clone too, right? He had to be. Naruto must have made an extra and snuck out already. Naruto slowly turned his head to look at Lee. Sorry to say, bushy brow, but I'm the real one. He must have known what he was thinking. Naruto's voice broke Lee from his shock. No! Why are you the real one? Why did you jump in front of him? I had to, it had to be me, no clone of mine would have survived through this. It was the best way to save you. Naruto wobbled a little now. But why did you have to save me? You were the one who was actually keeping up with him. You should have saved yourself. Tears were beginning to well up in Lee's eyes. I promised Tenten, Naruto whispered. Lee's eyes grew big. I swore to her that I'd keep you safe. Naruto fell backwards. Lee stumbled down and barely caught him. Lee sat on his knees, supporting Naruto with his arms. Besides, what kind of Hokage would I be if I let my friends die? It was bad enough when I watched you get captured. You can't be Hokage at all if you die. Tears fell freely from Lee's face now. What was all that talk about nothing separating us? Were those just empty words? Naruto smiled slightly up at him. It's funny. He completely ignored Lee's questions. I didn't think anyone would cry for me when I died. Naruto's voice almost sounded relieved. The whole village, they hated me, you know. Even our generation. They all looked at me like I was going to destroy them. I didn't know what I'd done to deserve it until just before I became a genin. I want you to know too. This was it. The secret Lee had wanted to hear since he'd met Naruto. Lee had spent hours in the library. Days asking people to just try and get one more hint. Now he was about to get it. But he didn't want to know now, not like this. No, Naruto. Lee choked out. Conserve your strength. If you stop speaking, you might still be able to live. Naruto ignored him. It was because of the Kyuubi no Yoko. It was sealed inside me as a baby. Lee's tears hit full force now. It all finally made sense. He had all the clues, but he hadn't even been able to put it together. Now it was almost too late. Naruto, please stop. Lee begged. It does not matter, I accept you regardless. Hinata and Guy-sensei still do as well. We do not care if you have a demon inside you, just live. Naruto felt tears start to slip out of his own eyes as well now. His voice came out hoarse. Meeting you guys was the best thing that ever happened to me. I would rather die and never become Hokage than lose one of you. Thank you, Lee, for being my friend. Naruto closed his eyes and went limp right in the boy's arms. Naruto! Lee put his face up to Naruto's chest. He didn't have a pulse. This is the first time you actually used my name. Why did it have to be the last thing you ever said to me? Lee's voice was muffled by Naruto's jacket. Naruto! Lee screamed to the sky. Naruto lived a hard life. To have no one is to have no purpose. Meeting you gave him purpose. Naruto and I were very much alike. He was just as much prepared to become a real shinobi as I. To do that, you must accept death. Haku slid himself back into his mirror. Regret was heavy in his voice. Be quiet, Lee whispered. He gently lay Naruto down. Lee then sat cross-legged next to him and began pulling Saban out of his body. Blood spurted with each one, but Lee kept going. Soon, Naruto's body was free of them. Lee closed Naruto's eyes and then began to pull the Saban out of himself. Naruto. Lee grit his teeth as he pulled one out. Haku just watched him silently. He owed him at least that. You were my best friend. I am hurting so badly right now that I cannot even describe it. Lee finished pulling off the Saban, and then removed his leg weights. Haku still made no move to stop him. The only thing that I can possibly think of to ease the pain is by avenging you. I will do whatever it takes, even if it destroys my own body. Lee slowly stood up, a pair of weights in each hand. Here I come. He then threw one of them at one of Haku's mirrors. It will take more than just a couple pounds to destroy my mirror. Haku was cut off as the weights shattered the mirror he was in completely. The shattering caused all of the reflections to disappear, leaving only one Haku in a mirror. Lee looked at it immediately, and whipped his second weight. Haku barely managed to dive out in time. He fell out of it upside down. Nevertheless, he turned to throw his Saban at Lee, but he was gone. Haku didn't even have time to wonder where he went as a elbow buried itself in his stomach. Konoha Kaigansho! Lee shouted as Haku went flying backwards into the mist. Lee landed as Haku's ice mirrors shattered all around him. Haku's back connected painfully with the concrete, successfully knocking the breath from his body. Haku slowly stood up. Lee charged straight at him. Haku raised his arm and blocked a punch. He then jumped over Lee's sweeping kick. Lee vanished and Haku felt Lee's fist connect with his shoulder. Haku spun twice from the force of the blow. Lee wasn't in sight again. Haku heard him though. He bent low just as Lee's kick flew over. What incredible speed! Haku blocked Lee's follow-up kick. He skid back several feet from the force. And power. Haku moved his head sideways to dodge Lee's next punch. But I cannot afford to lose here. Haku was now within Lee's guard. He threw his own punch. Before it could connect with Lee's stomach, he disappeared. Let go of my sword. Zabuza gritted his teeth and pushed down harder. Guy held his ground firmly. He wasn't even giving an inch. Blood spurted out of his open wound. You release your hold on it, Guy retorted through clenched teeth. It was taking all his power to accomplish this task and ignore the pain. At the very least, he had Zabuza in sight now. Guy pushed upwards a little. Zabuza wouldn't budge either. Suddenly, a figure flew right under and between them. He rolled painfully past them before stumbled up to his feet. Haku? Zabuza looked over in surprise. Guy took the opportunity and began to push the blade up. Then Lee flew over them and pressed on his with his attack. Lee? Guy was completely shocked now. He had never seen such a look of pure rage on Lee's face. He then realized that he could see farther into the mist than normally. Zabuza was lifting the mist? His surprise was greater than Guy had expected. Guy could now see Tazuna and Hinata as well. Hinata watched in horror as Lee beat on the boy she had come to know over the past 2 weeks. Lee-senpai. Stop. Hinata took a couple steps away from Tazuna. Haku-san isn't a bad person. There's no need to go so far. Lee actually halted his attack to look at Hinata. Haku leaned painfully against the railing and rubbed his bruised cheek. Despite the apparent aggressive assault Lee was giving, hardly any of his blows were more than glancing. He was too worked up to fight properly. A fact Haku was using to stay alive at the moment. He is not a bad person? Lee asked in disbelief. Hinata could do nothing more than look at him in confusion. He is the worst kind of person, Lee shouted, pointing a dramatic finger at Haku. He killed Naruto. I can never forgive him for that. Lee balled his hands into fists. It's time. Lee then widened his stance and stuck his arms in an X in front of himself. The world stopped for Guy and Hinata. Their thoughts ran exactly the same. Naruto was dead? Impossible. Lee had just been caught in the heat of battle and had misjudged. There was no way he was dead. First gate, Lee called, breaking them both from their reserve. Guy finally had the peace of mind to say something. He let go of Zabuza's sword and dodged out of the way as it came crashing onto the ground. Zabuza stumbled forward from the unexpected shift. Lee, wait. He took only a couple running steps. Open! It was too late. Lee vanished for a second and then he and Haku tumbled off the side of the bridge. Guy stopped running. There was no point following him. He had Zabuza still to fight. Well, seems like Haku did pretty good. Too bad for that kid of yours. Zabuza chuckled to himself as he swung at Guy again. Guy held up his hand and this time stopped the blade with one hand. What? Guy's back was still turned to Zabuza. You'll pay for that comment, Guy said darkly. He spun around and nailed Zabuza in the side of the head with a strong kick. Zabuza stuck his blade into the ground to keep himself from skidding. Zabuza regretted the decision. He was still close enough to see Guy's face clearly. The look of pure rage was something more akin to a devil than Zabuza had ever seen. Guy reached into his back pouch, causing Zabuza tensed up. Guy pulled out nunchaku and the demon ninja let out a sigh of relief. You plan to beat my big sword with that small thing? Zabuza had to suppress a laugh. Guy didn't even respond this time. Instead, he swung his weapon around. Suit yourself. Zabuza hefted his mighty blade and charged. Scary looking or not, he was going to split him in half. As he came to Guy, he swung down. Guy swung his weapon to meet Zabuza's sword. The result was Zabuza's sword being knocked completely backwards. What the Zabuza's speech was cut as Guy slammed the two poles together and then thrust them into Zabuza's face. Gah! Zabuza held his face with one hand. The other still held onto the sword. You'll pay for that. Guy vanished. Apparently you didn't hear me. Zabuza's eyes grew wide. The voice was right behind his ear. It is you who will pay. Zabuza had no chance to move as his ribcage lit up in burning pain. He spun around swinging his blade. Guy knocked it back with his nunchaku again. Another swing around and one of the wood poles slapped Zabuza in the side of the face. The force sent Zabuza to the ground. Zabuza slowly started to stand up. Is that the best you can do? Guy's foot connected with Zabuza's stomach, lifting him completely from where he lay and into the air. Guy swung his weapon around again. Zabuza barely blocked with his blade. The force sent the still airborne Zabuza flying back a few feet. He landed and skid on the ground. Guy took a step towards him. Zabuza's eyes grew wide with fear. Stay away. He reached into his pocket and pulled out 4 shuriken. He whipped them all. 3 of them nailed Guy in the torso. 1 nicked him in the cheek. It started to bleed freely. Guy wiped the blood off of it and looked down at it. You disappoint me. I thought the bloody demon of the mist would pose a bigger threat than this. Zabuza felt his fear increasing. The man had lost it. He took the blow of those shuriken without even blinking. Guy vanished and reappeared in front of Zabuza. His nunchaku were already coming around. Zabuza blocked with the handle of his sword. He then pulled out a kunai and stabbed at Guy. Guy stepped back, but it was too late. Zabuza struck right in between the ribs. Guy coughed up blood. I'm not done yet. He swung his nunchaku again. Zabuza again blocked with his blade. He then pulled his kunai out before taking another stab. Guy jumped back and successfully dodged this time. So the cornered demon gets desperate. A good strategy, though. Blocking with that big sword of yours and then slicing at me with your speedy, small kunai. It worked the first time, but it won't help you anymore. Guy began his assault again. Hinata was blind to everything that was happening in front of her. The second Lee fell off the bridge. His words resounded in her head. She needed to see it for herself. Tazuna put his hand on her shoulder. Hey, take me to him. I want to see him too. Tazuna's voice was solemn. Hinata nodded her thanks, grabbed Tazuna's hand and led them past the two fighting ninja. It didn't take long to make out Naruto's body in the clearing mist. Hinata gasped at the sight she saw. His body was covered with little bloody holes. Dozens of saban and shards of ice lay all around him. Tazuna doubted he would have even needed his glasses to confirm the boy wasn't breathing. Hinata knelt down to check anyways. He had no pulse, as she already knew. Hinata bit back her tears. You don't need to hold them in for me. Tazuna began wiping away his own tears. Damn it, look at him. Smiling even in death. What Tazuna said was true. Naruto's mouth was curved upwards, even from the way he lay. Hinata stared down at Naruto. So many things were running through her mind. Finally, words started to come to her. I loved him, you know. Tazuna stared at her silently. I've loved him for a long time, I think. I only just realized it recently, though. It had started out as admiration. I wonder when it turned into something more? Hinata smiled bitterly at how pathetic she was. This was the first time she had ever confessed aloud, and he wasn't even alive to hear it. I was so happy when we were placed on the same team, I thought I could have died right then. It was a good thing I didn't. I had so many new experiences with him. Tears finally started to fall from her eyes. They hit Naruto in the cheek. Sometimes he was a real idiot. But I fell even more in love with him because of it. Tazuna's tears picked up as Hinata kept talking. She slowly began rubbing his cheek. Just recently, we made a vow to each other. I was going to become the heir to my clan. He was going to become Hokage. We were both going to get the respect we wanted. Hinata wiped away her tears. She shuddered for a second. Damn it, Naruto! Hinata shouted. Tazuna looked at her in surprise. Who is supposed to become Hokage now? Hinata screamed as she banged a fist on his chest. Who am I supposed to draw my confidence from now? She hit him again. Who am I supposed to accomplish my dream with now? She hit him once more. Her last question came as little more than a whisper. Who am I supposed to love now? No fist followed. Instead, Hinata broke completely down into tears. Haku and Lee both landed on the water at approximately the same time. There was no mist down here at all. Instead, the clear blue sky and bright rays of the sun shined down on them. Something completely unfit for the battle that was taking place. Neither shinobi paid any attention to the nice weather, though. They were squaring off. Lee sent a flying kick at Haku. A wall of ice rose and Lee nailed that instead, leaving a huge crack. Lee disappeared and reappeared behind Haku. This time a hand of ice shot from the water and grabbed Lee's forearm, stopping his punch completely. You made a big mistake bringing me down here. Haku turned to face Lee. This whole battlefield is now my weapon. There is no way you can beat me when we fight on top of the water. Haku rose his arms. In response, 4 spikes of ice shot out of the water at Lee. Thinking fast, Lee kicked the ice arm, freeing his hand. Lee then did a back flip, avoiding the spikes. I cannot afford to lose here. I still have time left with the first gate. Lee charged again. Haku raised another wall of ice. Lee easily shattered it with his knee. He then released the chamber kick at Haku. Haku formed the water around his arm and made an ice gauntlet. He blocked the kick with that gauntlet. Lee landed on the ground and the water crawled up his feet and froze. Lee was stuck again like he was up on the bridge. I'm sorry, but this is it for you. Haku made a series of hand signs. The water around Lee began to spin and rise up. Not long, and it was all the way up to his neck. It will take more than this to bring me down. Lee flailed his arms as best he could, but it proved pointless. As the spinning water rose over his head, it solidified. Lee was now trapped inside a prison of ice. He couldn't move at all. It must be a painful way to die. Haku sympathized. Not being able to move, not able to breathe. The only thing you can do is wait to die. I'm sorry that you are unable to avenge your friend. Haku turned around and started to walk towards the support beams on the bridge. A burst of chakra made him stop. Haku turned around in surprise. What he saw was an even greater surprise. Lee was glowing and the ice began cracking. Impossible. Haku murmured as the ice shattered completely with a loud bang. Second gate, open, Lee said triumphantly. He touched the water and vanished. His fist connected with Haku's cheek, knocking him back. Haku landed on the water painfully. To have enough power to shatter the ice with pure chakra, incredible. Lee didn't give Haku any longer to admire his new strength as he charged at him again. Haku rose another wall of water in defense. Before it even turned to ice, Lee burst through it. Haku brought up his gauntlet to defend. Lee's fist shattered it too. Ice spikes fired from behind Haku. Lee jumped backwards to dodge them. Wasting no time, Haku raised his hands. A giant wave of water formed all around him. Meanwhile, spikes of ice shot continued to shoot at Lee. The water began to bend inwards. Soon, Haku had himself encased in a giant dome of water. The water turned to ice and Haku sat down and breathed a sigh of relief. You cannot hide from me, Lee shouted. He flew at the dome and nailed it with his most powerful kick. The ice didn't even crack. Lee jumped back and did it again. He then followed the second kick with a punch. The ice still didn't give way. You won't be able to break this ice. It is much thicker than my mirrors. Also, once this dome is complete, it takes no chakra to maintain. While your gates and chakra exhaust out there, I will be recovering my chakra in here. Haku sat cross-legged in the center of his dome. He had spoken more to himself. There was no way Lee could hear him from in here. Soon Lee's blows stopped. Haku smiled and stood up. It was time to end this. Then it happened. The top of Haku's dome shattered. Lee fell through and landed in a crouch right in front of him. That shouldn't be possible. Haku slid backwards on the slippery dome floor. How did Lee know that the weakest point of his dome was the top where the water had merged? Anything is possible if you set your mind to it. Lee jumped at Haku, his fist extended. A spike of ice shot from the floor, blocking Lee's fist. Lee slid backwards as 3 more spikes shot up right where he had been standing. Lee then slid himself forward. He jumped over another spike that appeared. Stop this! The dome is made of ice. Surely you see the hopelessness of this struggle. Haku yelled as he ducked under Lee's kick. Haku slid to the center of the dome. He rose his arms and spikes fired from all around at Lee. I told you, anything is possible. Lee vanished and all the ice shattered uselessly against itself. Haku looked downwards just in time to see Lee's foot fly up at him. It connected with his chin and launched him outside of the ice dome. Just as Haku's flight skyward stopped, Lee appeared behind him. The bandages on his arms wrapped themselves around Haku. They pulled tight. Haku could no longer move. Lee grabbed onto him, and as they fell, Lee began spinning quickly. Haku realized with fear that Lee intended to slam him into the dome he'd created to defend himself. Haku closed his eyes and focused hard. The ice began to melt. Willing it to melt faster, Haku was barely able to make it all vanish before he and Lee nailed the water. However, without the ice there, Haku and Lee drilled deep down into the water. Haku's ears popped from the pressure of going so far down. Soon their descent slowed. The now wet bandages snapped easily with a slight tug from Haku. He kicked off of Lee and began swimming towards the surface. Third gate, open! Haku felt another boom of chakra. He turned around in disbelief. Lee started kicking with all his might. He flew at Haku like a rocket. Haku didn't have a chance to move out of the way as Lee nailed him in the shoulder. Haku swung around in the water. Right when he stopped spinning, he felt Lee nail him again in the back as he shot by again. Haku couldn't even tell if Lee was punching him or just plain ramming him anymore. Even scarier, Haku realized he had lost his bearings. With all the spinning, Haku didn't even know what way was up. Suddenly, Lee nailed him again. Haku watched the way the bubbles went that Lee created. Haku knew which way to go now. He formed a quick set of seals. A pillar of ice formed beneath his feet and started shooting upwards. Haku looked out of the corner of his eye. He saw Lee flying upwards towards him. This was going to be close. Haku barely broke the water before Lee did. He channeled all the chakra into his feet and jumped. Combined with the pressure of breaking out of the water, and Haku went higher than he had expected. He looked down to see the bridge was well below him. Haku's relief turned into pure terror as he felt Lee grab onto both of his ankles. "It is over!" Lee roared. He began doing a series of front flips, taking Haku along for the ride. When he released his hold, Haku was flung towards the bridge at an alarming speed. Zabuza had been one of the best swordsmen in his village. Even among the 7 that he was a group of, he was considered one of the best. It was rare in his life that he met someone who outclassed him in skills with a weapon. For this crazy green beast to be someone who was better than him was of great insult to Zabuza. "Damn it! I'm going to tear you to shreds!" Zabuza roared. He charged and stabbed at Guy with his kunai again. Guy ducked under the kunai, stepped forward and swung his nunchaku upwards. The pole connected with Zabuza's chin. "You won't be tearing anyone else to shreds ever again." Guy swung his nunchaku around and nailed Zabuza painfully in the back of the knee. Zabuza dropped down to his knees just as a crash appeared further down the bridge. Both shinobi looked to see Haku laying on the ground. The boy started to stumble up but collapsed. Lee soon fell down onto the bridge too. He landed, but then he too stumbled. The gate's effects had worn off. "Seems like this is it, Momochi Zabuza, for you and your pupil." Guy swung his nunchaku back into his pouch. "For ending my student's youth, I plan to take yours." Guy cocked back his fist in preparation. Zabuza could only look at it in fear. This fist would definitely not be one he could survive. Haku's vision blurred back just in time for him to see Guy bring his fist back. Haku again attempted to stand up. "Damn it!" Haku cursed. His arms were broken. He had used them to shield himself from the impact onto the bridge. He was alive, but the price had been heavy. Haku barely managed to get to his feet. He could make it. As long as his feet worked, he would be just fast enough to intercept that punch. "Jukin!" Haku's vision blurred completely again. He coughed up blood and then fell to his knees. "Zabuza-san, run!" Haku fell to the floor, unconscious. Hinata stood behind him. Her open palm was still extended outwards. Her Byakugan still active. "I believed in you, Haku-san. I really did." Her face was still stained with tears. A sudden movement in the mist caught the attention of her eyes. "Guy-sensei, behind you." Guy spun around at Hinata's warning. A man with a spear appeared out of what mist was left and charged at him. Guy grabbed it as the man thrust it at him. A sneak attack. Most unyouthful. Guy snapped the spear and then grabbed the man by the throat and slammed him into the ground. Zabuza smiled. He didn't know who the man was or where he had come from, but he gave him just the opportunity he needed. Zabuza stood up and hefted his sword. He was going to hack Guy in two. "Don't even think about it." Guy shot his foot backwards. It connected with Zabuza's stomach. Zabuza coughed up blood and dropped his sword and kunai. Guy turned back to face him. Well, well. Would you look at this here? Poor little Zabuza's all beat up." Zabuza and Guy turned to see who was here now. Soon the mist cleared all the way to reveal the newcomers. "Mather." Jonin liked what they saw. Gato stood there, and behind him was an army of thugs. Gato, Zabuza growled. What the hell is this? What are you doing here? He slowly stood up to face his employer. Well, you see, Zabuza, I've changed my mind again. I can't afford to triple your salary. I like the idea of having you butchered more. An evil grin appeared across Gato's face. What? Zabuza's eyes got wide with disbelief. Yep, you're too wild lately. Too indirect. Who the hell kidnaps a kid so they can kill a different man 2 weeks later? Now that you and that other guy who had you shaken in your boots are all beat up, these guys will clean house. It's simple, cheap. Gato laughed maliciously. Zabuza stared down at the massive group in front of him. I thought I already told you. No matter how injured, those men don't have the ability to kill a Jonin, let alone two. I don't like how you're insinuating that we should team up, but I don't see many other options at the moment. Guy stepped forward, cracking his knuckles. I'll settle my score with you later. Guess that means we're in an agreement. Zabuza readied his sword. I will join you. Lee stumbled up next to his sensei. Zabuza and Guy both looked surprised to see him standing there. No, Lee. You've done enough. Opening the gates has tore your muscles, you must rest for a while. Guy caught Lee as he stumbled forward. I have to get him. He is the reason this all happened. He is the reason Naruto is dead. Lee looked fiercely at Gato. He deeply regretted not killing him when he had the chance. I owe you one for what you did to my arm, you brat. Gato pointed his cane accusingly at Lee. I'm going to enjoy kicking your corpse when this is over. Over my dead body. Guy and Lee both turned surprised faces towards Zabuza. Even he seemed surprised by the words that left his mouth. The group was so surprised, no one noticed Hinata charged past until it was too late. Guy didn't have a chance to grab her. He was still holding on to Lee too. What the hell? Gato immediately turned and ran into the safety of his group. I've had enough, kill the bitch, and then the rest of them. Hinata, wait. Don't do this, there are too many of them. Guy watched in horror, as she didn't listen. It's not that she wasn't listening though. It was that she didn't hear him. Lee's words of how this man was the cause of Naruto's death rang true through her ears. She was going to pay him back in full. No matter how many thugs were in the way. Alright, I get dibs on the girl. One man stepped forward with a sword in hand. Before he could even react, he had a full juken strike through his heart. What did the man coughed up blood and fell backwards. The rest of them paused and stared in shock at what happened. Hinata didn't stop though. She sprinted into the heart of the group. The men quickly got over their shock and started swinging whatever they could at her. She dodged and weaved through every strike, throwing in her own here and there. Soon, though, she was completely surrounded, and they all swung down at once. Kaiten! All the thugs in the immediate vicinity were blasted backwards. Most of them fell on top of others, leaving more than half of them sprawled out on the ground. Some of the men were impaled on weapons that they fell on. More than enough were down to give Hinata a clear gap to her target. Gato reached the edge of the bridge and turned around. To his horror, all his guards were knocked down and the girl was coming straight for him. Wait, please stop. I'll give you anything you want. Money, power, men, you name it. Gato held up his arms in front of his face. Then give me back Naruto-kun. Hinata struck Gato in his broken arm. Gato howled in pain. Can you do that? Hinata's next strike hit his shoulder. Is it within your abilities to bring him back to me? Hinata sent a juken into his gut. Please. Gato begged as he doubled over. He had never felt pain like this in his life. His plea fell on deaf ears as Hinata's arms became encased in blue chakra for a split second. Juho Sashiken. She nailed Gato right in the side of the head, killing him and sending him off the ledge. Hinata stood there, panting. She'd done it. She'd got to him. You bitch, you'll pay for that. A couple of the thugs were running up behind her. Their weapons raised to strike. It didn't matter anymore though. Not to Hinata. She'd avenged Naruto. She was satisfied. Hinata, no, run! Guy called. Time was in slow motion for him. He watched as the thugs raised their weapons. He let go of Lee and started to run. He watched Hinata stand straight. He watched the weapons fall. Guy had no time to do anything. Even he wasn't that fast. He'd failed not one, but two students. Hinata closed her eyes and waited for the blows to come. They never did. Instead, she heard a loud clang as all their weapons were deflected. She spun around in surprise to see Zabuza standing there. His sword had saved her life. Surprised to see me, girl? Zabuza swung his sword and split the group in front of him in half. If you want to die, then die fighting. Don't die with your back turned to the enemy. How would that blonde brat have felt if you died so pathetically? Hinata's eyes grew wide. Zabuza was right, she realized. She had been ready to throw her life away. But that wasn't right. That wasn't how Naruto would have wanted it. Newfound determination settled into her eyes. Let's go. Hinata's Byakugan activated and she slid into her stance. That's more like it, Zabuza said. He turned to face the thugs and charged forward without waiting for Hinata. One swing of his sword and three of them lost their heads. You bastard! Another man shouted as he ran at Zabuza from the side with a spear in hand. He didn't get far as Hinata sent a juken into the side of his face. Nice one, girl. Zabuza nodded his approval before turning back to the gang of men. To his surprise, some were looking the other way. What's going on? Guy-sensei and Lee-senpai are fighting from the other end. Hinata answered for him. Alright, then let's meet them halfway. Hinata nodded and they both charged together. They covered each other's weaknesses well. Zabuza would take out many of them at a distance thanks to his massive blade. If one or two men got in too close, Hinata would easily dispatch them. Soon, they met up with Guy and Lee at the center. All four shinobi quickly went back to back. The gang of men had been completely thinned out by now. There was only enough of them left to form a small circle around the shinobi. Yet Lee had his doubts that they could actually handle what was left. His body felt like it was on fire, and his vision was beginning to blur. Lee-senpai. I'm glad you're alright. Hinata managed to say. Yeah, same to you. Lee looked at his female teammate. His only teammate. I'm sorry. Hinata shook her head. Don't be, I can't blame you. Hinata felt tears edge at her eyes again just from thinking about Naruto. Stay focused. Zabuza snapped. Even he felt like he could topple over at any moment. We're going to make you guys pay for killing our meal ticket and half our men. A big man with a huge mace said as he edged forward slightly. Yeah, after we mount your heads on some poles, we're gonna have our way with the nearby town. Another man shouted. Right, boys? The rest gave a small cheer. A second later, and the one who had just talked got hit in the back of the head by a small arrow. He toppled over dead. What the hell? All the thugs turned to see what had happened. Now! Guy shouted. All four shinobi sprung forward and took care of the bandits while their attention was diverted. What was that? Lee asked as he struck down the last one. It was Inari-san and Tsunami-san. Zabuza and Lee both gave Hinata a strange look. Then she remembered that neither of them had met the two before. Tazuna-san's daughter and grandson. Hinata clarified. Oh, I see. Lee looked across the bridge and saw all three of them. They were all leaned over Naruto's corpse. Naruto slowly stood up from where he had been laying. Where the hell am I? He groaned while looking around. It looked like a sewer of some sort. There were pipes everywhere, not to mention how dark and dank it was. Am I even alive? Naruto wondered out loud to himself. Oh no. What if this is hell? Naruto started to panic. Then he heard it. At first Naruto thought it might be wind. But it was different. It sounded more like breathing. But what could be so big that Naruto could hear it like that? Naruto wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer to that. Steeling his nerves, Naruto slowly began walking. At first, Naruto was afraid he was going to get lost. He made numerous turns just to follow the source of the breathing. Then Naruto almost laughed to himself. Lost? He had been lost since he got here. Soon Naruto came to a huge room with a gigantic cage on the other end. The word seal was written on it. Naruto was impressed by the massive size. Naruto jumped. Who's there? Show yourself! Naruto shouted. So my idiot host has finally come to see me. Naruto located the sound of the voice. It was coming from behind the cage. Naruto peered at it but couldn't see anything but pitch darkness. So he edged closer. Soon he was just a few feet from the cage. A massive eye opened up and a claw shot to the edge of the cage. What the hell? Naruto jumped back in surprise. What are you? Where are we? Naruto shouted his questions at it. You fool, you should know who I am. The eye roared. No way, don't tell me you're the devil. Ah man, this really sucks, I knew I was in hell. Naruto balled himself up onto the ground and started rocking back and forth. You're not dead. We are simply in your mindscape. Naruto looked up in surprise at the massive eye. I'm not dead? This is my mind? Naruto slowly stood back up. Then what the hell is something like you doing in my mind? Naruto pointed an accusing finger at the eye. You really are an idiot. The eye roared at him. Then Naruto saw it. The barest flicker of a tail, of several tails. You! Realization dawned on Naruto. You are that bastard fox. Why I oughta kick your ass right now? Naruto was quickly overcome with anger. This was the thing that had caused him misery for his whole life. This was why he never had friends. Now he could see it, right in front of him. He could just strangle it, he was so pissed. The fox roared with laughter. Go ahead, brat. Rip this seal right off and you and I can have a good round. Naruto eyed the fox carefully. What happens to you if I die? Naruto finally asked. The fox's eye widened in surprise at the question. Assuming I am still sealed inside a twerp like you, I'd disappear for a while. But you'd come back? How long would it take? Naruto scratched his chin in thought. 1 year. 100 years. Not even I would know that. Why does an idiot like you want to know? Naruto's questions confused the fox. So if I was in such a tough battle, why didn't you help me out at all? Surely a big lug like you has some chakra to spare. Naruto pointed another accusing finger at the fox. Fool. Naruto was taken aback by the fox's newest insult. I sensed no animosity or killing intent. If your life had been in danger, I would have known it. That is why I didn't need to give you chakra. Naruto was about to say more, but a drop of water hit him in the face. Did you just spit on me? Naruto asked in disgust. 2 more drops hit him. No. The outside world is calling you back. Our conversation is over. The fox began to retreat farther into its cage. Hey, you damn fox! The fox turned its eye towards Naruto. I'm not an idiot. My name is Uzumaki Naruto, and I'm going to be Hokage. Remember it. Naruto had been fading as he spoke, and when he had completed his sentence, he disappeared altogether. Naruto, the fox whispered. I'll definitely remember it when I'm ripping you to shreds. The fox grinned, revealing its massive teeth. Naruto hurt like hell all over. He slowly began to open his eyes. He had to close them when something wet hit them. Damn, that stings. Naruto moaned. Naruto! Naruto recognized that voice. What's up, Inari? Naruto completely opened his eyes to see the shocked and teary face of the boy. He also saw Tazuna and Tsunami. You're alive! Inari was in complete shock. Dummy, of course I'm alive. Naruto began to sit up. I can't die until I become Hokage. No, don't strain yourself. Tsunami cautioned. How is everyone? Naruto ignored Tsunami and kept rising. They're all right. Tazuna answered while wiping his own tears away. Gato and his men showed up and we teamed up with those Miss Nin to beat them. Really? Man, that's going to take some explaining. Naruto was now standing. He looked over towards where his teammates were. He then looked over at Inari. What's with the get-up? The boy was wearing a bunch of kitchenware like it was armor. I came to help out, Inari said proudly as he hefted up a tiny crossbow. I tried recruiting others in the village, but they were all a bunch of scared wycats, so I went to leave by myself. Of course, Mom wouldn't let me, so she followed. Naruto turned and looked at Inari's mom. She held a frying pan nervously. Hinata! Inari called over. Naruto! Naruto is alive! Both of them looked over immediately. They saw Naruto standing there now, his eyes open. He slowly stuck his arm up and gave them a small wave. Naruto-kun! Naruto! Hinata felt new tears returning to her eyes. She couldn't believe it. Naruto was alive. She ran up to him as fast as she could. She slowed to a stop just in front of him. How's it going? Naruto tried to smile casually at her. Naruto-kun! Hinata leapt forward and gave Naruto the hardest hug she ever had in her life. She sobbed his name over and over into his shirt. I miss you too, Hinata. But your hug is crushing me. Naruto managed a pained smile as he patted her head. Lee stumbled a little. His muscles were still sore, it hurt to move, let alone run like he was, but nothing was going to stop him from reaching Naruto now. His best friend was alive. He was nearly there when he stumbled again. He fell right into his other two teammates, and they all fell over together. Ow, damn it, bushy brow. Naruto moaned. He was at the bottom of the group. Sorry, Naruto. Lee grunted. Naruto couldn't help it, he started laughing. Lee looked down at him in surprise. Then he too started laughing. Hinata soon joined in, her tears ran down her face as she did. Looks like it worked out for everyone after all. Zabuza mumbled as he began to fall forward. He was exhausted. Too exhausted to even think about continuing his fight with Guy. That it does. Guy caught Zabuza before he fell and put his arm over his shoulder to support him. I owe you the lives of all my students. Thank you, Zabuza. I don't know what you're talking about. Zabuza looked away from the man who was helping him. Stanley was a hostage. It would have been stupid to kill him. Besides, I only saved the girl. It was Haku who was too soft. But you were the one who found that boy. If you had found someone else, I may have been short a student right now. Besides, I think his softness is rubbing off on you a little. You call Lee by his given name after all. Guy smiled brightly at him. Speaking of your pupil, we should see about getting him medical assistance soon. Zabuza turned to look at Haku. It'll take more than that to kill Haku. He'll be okay. Guy laughed. We both have resilient pupils, huh? Zabuza looked up to see Lee helping his two teammates up. They were all still laughing. Yeah, we sure do. That's it for part 4. Thank you for watching and see you in the next one.